Good morning and welcome to the Thoroughbred Daily News Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN. I also do the Down the Stretch radio show with Dave Johnson every Saturday on Sirius XM Radio.
How y'all doing? I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports, back home from the road trip and still celebrating the Arkansas Razorbacks upset win over Tennessee on Saturday.
And that was a very good win indeed. I'm Zoe Cavan with First Racing and XBTV. And if you're wondering where I am, and we started this podcast early, so it was dark, but I am at my good friend Marietta Jelilich's house in Palm Springs, and it is absolutely beautiful right now. It's 85 degrees already, so give it an hour and I'll be melting and sitting back inside in the AC.
Oh, hit them straight.
Yeah. Yeah, right. We can go play golf if you want. Right on the golf course.
I guess that's a no, huh, Randy? All right. So back to enough golf and back to horse racing. Plenty to go over from last weekend. It was the last round of Breeders' Cup preps of any significance. And kind of wanted to divide them into the various divisions. And I thought the one that was the most interesting, and we're going to talk to Michael Banahan a little bit later in the show about East Avenue's win in the Breeders' Futurity. But to me, he was clearly the best of the three horses that ran in the male races. Chancellor McPatrick wins the Champagne, and Bob Baffert wins the American Pharoah with Citizen Bull. I love the kind of race he put in. He took it to them. He just motored around the track, beat them. But Randy, I got one question for you. Mm-hmm. Was there a speed bias there? Because a lot of people were talking about that. I didn't think, if there was one, I didn't think it was very pronounced, but I've heard some people say speed bias that carried him and carried a couple other horses to wins.
Well, I think there was more of a speed bias on opening day Friday than there was on Saturday. So, I'm not going to downgrade East Avenue's performance based on that. It's going to be interesting to me when we get to the Breeders' Cup to see who's going to be the betting favorite between East Avenue and Chancellor McPatrick. I mean, I agree with you that East Avenue was probably the more impressive, but not by much in my book. I thought Chancellor McPatrick had an outstanding win in the Champagne, and it was like we had talked about the week before. What we saw in the hopeful as far as his running style is concerned was not so much a function of trouble that he got into. He just has no speed. And he dropped way out of it again in the Champagne. So to me, looking ahead to the Breeders' Cup, that's going to be, in my book, the biggest concern about Chancellor McPatrick, because at Del Mar, the stretch run is 66 yards shorter than Chancellor McPatrick got at Aqueduct and 71 yards shorter than he got at Saratoga in the hopeful. And with his running style, he is going to be playing catch up, to Citizen Bull and Jonathan's Way and East Avenue by the time they turn for home at Del Mar. But he's a very, very nice horse. And his win in the Champagne was even better than it looked on paper, because he was 5 wide all the way around the turn and just cruising up to the leaders with Flavien Prat. I thought that was extremely impressive as well.
And Randy, I want to make another point about that. In this race, 2 jumps out of the gate, he was in the lead. He almost outbroke the field, and then it was like he just took himself out of the race.
Yeah.
Well, Zoe, you should be able to answer this as well. Is this as emblematic of a horse who hates kickback or just isn't comfortable being sent at all? He went from, jump and a half the lead to 5 jumps later, dead last and many lengths behind.
He's not giving them a head start, that's for sure. He broke cleanly, because I watched the break about 5 times just to be like, how did he get so far back? Did I miss something? Did I look away? Did he stumble? And he broke well. He's just got no early speed. And this is something that he's kind of learned. Maybe that initial start where he didn't get off to a good start and he got the dirt, this is how he's going to be. I'd like to see him a little bit closer, but you can't take him out of what seems to be right now, at least, his natural running style. Pratt knows him oh so well. The one thing about the Breeders' Cup, yes, the stretch is going to be shorter, but East Avenue is going to get some pace pressure, and he doesn't need the lead. he's tactical. I believe that he can sit just off the pace. He's not a need lead. We're going to talk about Bob's horse in just a moment, but Bob's horse is going to be sent. He's only got one way to go in the Breeders' Cup. So there'll be pace aplenty, and it's going to set up for Chancellor McPatrick in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And I believe he'll probably go off the favorite.
All right, so let's move on to the next race, what we haven't covered yet, which is the American Pharoah run out at Santa Anita. Bob Baffert won it for the 13th time. And, I guess if you Citizen Bull right now looks like the best of the Baffert horses, though I don't know about gaming and where he has been, but apparently he has just skipped the race and will be going to the Breeders' Cup. So if you're number one in the Bob Baffert battalion, that says something. But I'm not very impressed by this horse. He runs a good race, but there was nothing like, it doesn't have any electricity to him or any big moves or something that will get you really excited about him going forward. Can he win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? Sure. But, I think that Baffert, at least the horses he ran in the American Pharoah for him, and that's setting the bar very high, were a little bit on the ordinary side, even though he ran one too.
Yeah, Bob winning it for the 13th time, by the way, as well. That was Into Mischief's 22nd Grade 1 winner. He also won with Gina Romantica on the day as well. Martin Garcia was in town to ride for Bob, and he went off the third choice. It was Martin's first time winning the race. And I looked up some stats. Randy, you're going to love this. On Martin Garcia, okay. I actually have the exact number written in my iPad that I don't have with me. He's won 1,820 races, right? Lifetime. 462 of those have been for Bob Baffert. That is 25% of all of his races he has ever won have been for Bob. Now, the last 4 years, he's only ridden 13 horses for Bob. 11 have won. So it just goes to show you, he has a lifetime percentage when riding for Bob Baffert of 29%. When Martin Garcia is in for Bob, and he was in for one reason and one reason only. Yes, he just won on the horse. And two, the horse needs a strong rider and he needs to be sent. He needs to be pedaled. And that is the type of rider Martin is. So I think there's a little bit more under the hood on that horse. Is he as good as East Avenue or Chancellor McPatrick? No. But he's going to be right there, and Martin's going to pedal him for as far as he can.
Yeah, and we're also, when we talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and we talk about East Avenue, talk about Chancellor McPatrick, talk about Citizen Bull, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We also can't really forget about Jonathan's Way, Phil Bauer's horse that won the Iroquois so impressively on the front end that day. I don't think he really needs to be on the early lead either, but it's set up to be a pretty solid Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Do want to remind you that the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Listen to this. One of only 40 shares in the fastest horse in the world. He's been on Randy's list all summer long. His name is Cogburn. All right, they will sell at Keeneland's championship sale on Wednesday before the Breeders' Cup in the paddock at Del Mar. Cogburn is an undefeated Grade 1 winner and North American record setter in 2024. He's also the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. You can buy a share in Cogburn Wednesday before the Breeders' Cup. And the Keeneland November Breeders' Sale will be accepting wildcard entries up until the sale date. Make plans to attend and shop for mares like Zendaya, who was purchased at the 2015 Keeneland November Sale and is the dam of this weekend's Grade 1 Coolmore Mile winner, Carl Spackler. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
Looking for bloodstock that shapes the world? You can find it here. Foundation mares that will shape the breed. Weanlings with prime potential. Your next moment in the winner's circle. It's all waiting for you here at the world's marketplace. Keeneland November Breeding Stock Sale, where the future is found. Beginning Tuesday, November 5th.
This week's Fastest Horse of the Week is brought to you by, drumroll please, Nashville, one of those fast sires at Windstar Farm, whose first in foal mares last year sold for up to $850,000. $100,000. That's in foal mares, and now his first weanlings are coming to market. You can find 3 of them at Facing Tipton's upcoming Night of the Stars and another 35 at the Keeneland November sale. Now, as a racehorse, of course, Nashville was super fast. Track record, 107.89 for 6 furlongs at Keeneland, running nearly a full second faster, as we mentioned, than the Breeders' Cup Sprint later on that same day. So Nashville, one of those fast sires at WinStar. Fastest horse of the week also took place at Keeneland. That would have been on Friday's opening day. Federal Judge, co-owned by WinStar and Sienna Farm, trained by Brad Cox, won the Phoenix Stakes, the oldest stakes race in America, by a widening margin of 5.5 lengths. 6 furlongs, 108.20, the fastest raw running time of the Phoenix in 24 years. And the Beyer speed figure that Federal Judge earned for that race, 106. He stamps himself as one of the leading contenders now for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. The only real question mark is something that Bill just mentioned in the previous segment. On opening day at Keeneland, most people, I'm one of those, believe that there was a speed bias, maybe even a speed and rail bias to a certain extent, certainly a speed bias, and Federal Judge led from start to finish from post position number 1 in the Phoenix under jockey Flavien Prat. Nevertheless, Federal Judge, our fastest horse of the week.
We welcome in now our guest of the week, Michael Banahan. He's the director of Bloodstock for Godolphin, and what a weekend it was for Godolphin at Keeneland, winning the Alcibiades on Friday and coming back and winning the Breeders' Futurity with East Avenue on Saturday. Michael, I know you guys are so used to winning big races, but did this, what kind of thrill was this to get the two main 2-year-old races at Keeneland under your belt?
Well, I'm not too sure where it'll rank on the great weekends we've had throughout the course of our time here racing in the US, but I would suggest that it's very close to the top. Mm-hmm. To have 2-year-olds win on our home track, both by our own stallions, homebred horses, it was absolutely phenomenal. And the great thing about winning at Keeneland, obviously we love Keeneland, but being our home track, we have an awful lot of employees that can get out to the track, be engaged with the event, and celebrate if we do happen to get to the winning line first as well. So I think that's maybe as big a part of it as anything else, because if we're at Saratoga or California or somewhere else and down in Louisiana, there's usually just a small representation of our team, 1s and 2s, but to be able to do it at the home track at Keeneland is spectacular, and Keeneland's such a spectacular place to do it as well. And to have 2-year-olds doing it, we sponsored the Alcibiades for 22 years. We never had a filly close enough to get into the money, and to actually win it for the first time was very special. And then come back on Saturday with the Futurity that Claiborne have sponsored, and since Claiborne have sponsored the race, we've been very, very fortunate to win it 3 times. So it's been a lucky race for us.
Well, Michael, before we get into some of the turf horses and all, let's dig a little deeper, drill down a little more into the 2-year-olds. In talking to Brendan Walsh about East Avenue prior to the race, you could tell he was excited, but he was doing his best to sort of temper his enthusiasm, right? Yeah. He's only had 1 race. He's got to go out and do it. Give us a little bit about what the thoughts have been behind the scenes about East Avenue from the same female family as Cody's Wish, right from the start.
Well, we liked him from the get-go when he was a young foal yearling as well. He got broken down in Bridlewood, and Mina Murphy does a fabulous job down there with our horses, and we liked him on the track down there. But we like a lot of them when they're down in Florida doing 3/8 of a mile. They look good doing it, but he certainly did. We held him in very high regard. When he came up to Keeneland and joined Brendan's string up there, he only maybe worked once, twice, and they were all pretty high on him as well from then. So it was sort of like tempering our enthusiasm all the way through the summertime, knowing that he looked like a really, really nice horse, And we said we'd stay here in Kentucky rather than bringing them up to Saratoga, which, usually if we have some really nice ones, we'll bring them up there. But we've been disappointed before bringing horses to Saratoga. Ellis is a good place to get them started. Prize money obviously is good down here. And we just said we keep him in Kentucky. And he was ultra impressive that day. And he's trained forwardly ever since. So I think every time you go into Brendan's barn, not only with him, but his help, they were so high on the horse all along. And I think we were all nervous about him running just because we thought he was so good. And it was a competitive race. And I think I said it to someone the other day in the parade ring beforehand. Tyler Gaffleon had said, I'm really looking forward to letting him loose and show people what he can do. And I said, well, he didn't even do that. He sat up for the last furlong, posing for the cameras, really. And I think we think there's still a lot in him. It was nice to do that 2-turn, and for a horse to go from 3/4 to 2 turns at Keeneland was great. We don't think he needs to lead, but it was just circumstances played at Ellis that he was so much the better horse on Saturday, just to get an advantageous position going into that first turn. Tyler wanted to be a little bit more aggressive with him, but as you could see in the race, he responds very well to the jockey's cues. He would do whatever he wanted to do all through the race, eased off the bridle, going around the backside, and looking at him at the 3/8 pole, I sort of had to blink a couple of times. I couldn't believe how easy he was going in a quality field like that. And then he opened up and it was cruise control from there. So, we're exceptionally excited about him.
Quick follow-up. How much did Brendan Walsh's success with Maxfield have to do with him getting this horse as opposed to Brad Cox or Bill Mott, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, we try to be very fair and divvy up the horses as we think quality-wise where to go to all the trainers. And she was an unraced mare. This was her first foal getting to the racetrack. And as going through all our 2-year-olds in the springtime, it was a balance of who gets what. And we've had plenty of other ones that we thought were really nice horses that haven't got on and done it. So it's just keeping that, as equitable as possible between all the trainers. And I think, everyone has had a good run at the moment with winners. Brad obviously has a really nice filly for us. Brendan has this horse. Bill Mott has a couple of horses that we really like. We have a 2-year-old that has been beaten twice actually already, called Sovereignty, that Bill has, that we hold in very high regard as well. And Mike Stidham has had a lot of nice 2-year-olds out there. A couple of them have just need a little bit of time off before we get them back going again. And Owen Harty, he had a horse that ran second in the Saratoga Special, and he's had a really good year with his 2-year-olds as well. So I think everyone has had a fair share of nice horses, and you just don't know which ones are going to turn into the East Avenues, So Brendan has got a really nice horse this year for sure.
And this is where the comparisons start. People have already said Maxfield, and then someone's like, no, not Maxfield. It's got to be essential quality. Like, if you could compare him to any horse, and you have to do it now because I've asked you, who are you going to compare him to?
I think probably closer to essential quality. I think he's a bit more speed than Maxfield had, can get himself into a better position. He's more tractable. Maxfield was come from behind, as we saw in the Breeders Futurity, was a phenomenal run that day, but he came from way off the pace and mowed them down. This horse, as we all know, horses on the dirt with speed that can stay are unbelievably good horses to have in your stable. And I think this horse might be, who knows how good he can be, but I think having those qualities, we're pretty excited about where we can go with him. And I know it's a different deal if we hopefully, touch wood, we get to the Breeders' Cup. We were excited to get there with Maxfield. That didn't happen. Essential Quality was a home field advantage, so we didn't have to do any shipping or anything. But to go back out to California and you have to deal with the speed out there, which will be a little bit different to maybe what we've encountered before. But we don't feel like he really needs the lead. He can sit off a pace and he can do exactly what, Tyler, whatever rider has ridden him in the mornings, he'll do whatever they want him to do. So we feel like he has enough speed to get himself into a good position. He can maneuver through a race if things don't work out well for him. And so I think, you committed me to one. I'm going with Essential Quality.
Who named him? Because anyone that's been to Saratoga knows exactly where East Avenue is.
Exactly. We like doing that. Like, we had a good filly called Lake Avenue up there as well. We had a horse that wasn't quite as good that got named Nelson Avenue. So we've gone there, but who actually named him? I'd have to check and find out. Vicky Van Camp orchestrates and coordinates all our naming. And usually a lot of the employees and relations as well will throw names into it. It's a big effort. We only just finished naming our last 2-year-old a few weeks ago, actually. So that's how long it takes.
Michael, for the longest time, we've heard how much Sheikh Mohammed and the Godolphin team really wants to win the Kentucky Derby. It's the one big race in the world they have not won. Don't hear much about that anymore, but is that fever still burning within the organization as much as ever? And if so, how excited are they about East Avenue winning the Derby this or next year? Yeah,
well, I think always excited for Sheikh Mohammed to compete and try and win the big races globally, be it the Kentucky Derby, Breeders' Cups, Prix de l'Arcs, Melbourne Cups, wherever they might be. He loves competing at that top level. So I think some of the early days, it was more media driven than anything else. And some of those horses that went in the race weren't probably up to scratch to go there. Probably our best opportunity, or Sheikh Mohammed's best opportunity, was Street Cry, and he unfortunately hurt himself a couple of weeks before the race. And he loved Churchill Downs. We saw him in the Breeders' Cup, which was a phenomenal Breeders' Cup 2-year-old race that year, where he was placed and then came back and he won the Stephen Foster at Churchill. So we sort of always thought in the back of our minds he would have been a great opportunity there. We were really excited about Essential Quality getting in there. We thought, he had an unbelievable opportunity. He was favourite on the day. Lots of people will come out, after the race, said, he's the best horse in the race, but still didn't win. He wasn't even, he only got fourth. So it'd be wonderful for Sheikh Mohammed to have a horse in the Derby that could compete and be challenging for that trophy. And I think it would get him very excited. I know he's watching the race on a Saturday night, and so he's well aware of East Avenue, and I'm sure he was excited to see the talent that he showed that day.
So this is about the time of year when I start badgering Michael with phone calls and text messages and all that. So who's running in the Breeders' Cup races so we can get a head start on our homework? So we know East Avenue, we know Immersive and the juvenile fillies. Let's transition for a second to the Breeders' Cup turf. So Charlie has had Silver Knot and Measured Time here in the United States. Rebels Romance, winner of the race a couple of years ago, is lurking out there. What's the thought right now? I know we still got a couple of weeks before you have to pre-enter, but if the Breeders' Cup turf were being run this next weekend, for example, what's the thought process?
I would think probably Silver Knot will probably head in that direction, and maybe Rebels Romance as well. I think they're the two horses that are probably in the foremost of Charlie's mind that would go for the turf race.
What about the 2-year-old turf races? The juvenile turf, Al Quadra, Amori City. What's the
both of those probably would be lined up for that. Al Quadra ran a very nice race up in Canada, and he'll probably go straight to the Breeders' Cup and would have a have a big chance on that run up there. I think it was a quality race in the Summer Stakes this year. The horse that won the race is held in very high regard, and I think he might go there as well. And then the Murray City ran respectably in England in his last start, and I think he could very well come over for the turf race as well, juvenile turf race. And I think probably the horse that they're probably most look forward to is a Notable Speech in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I think he got bogged down in the soft ground in France the last day. When we've seen him on a firm surface, he's an electric turn of foot, and I think if he gets there in good shape, he'll take a lot of beating in the mile, I think.
I'm writing all this down. We're getting our homework done early here. Michael has saved himself about 4 text messages and 2 phone calls.
Yeah, well, we get more involved domestically, so I was hoping you were going to want to talk about Highland Falls in the Classic. That was
we can.
Let's go.
That's what we. Yeah, so like we were very excited about him running them in the Jockey Club. I think it was a good race this year up in Saratoga. Obviously, Bill Mott had his Whitney winner, Arthur's Ride, in there, and we were a little bit disappointed in the previous race in Monmouth and thought we should have taken advantage of breaking well. And we said we're going to get him out there, make more use of him, and certainly not give Arthur's Ride an easy lead around there. And he loves the distance. He's 1.25 mile horse, and he ran his eyeballs out that day and showed what he could do. And he's sort of learning all along, because he only started at Ellis Park 12 months ago before the Jockey Club, so he doesn't have the experience that a lot of other horses have gone in there, but we feel like he's peaking at the right time. Brad has him in great shape. He said he's come out of the Jockey Club really well, and he's been training well. So if we get another few good weeks out of him, I think we can go in there, and I think we have a bit of a shot there. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty open race this year.
Do you get to keep your rider, Pratt?
That might be more difficult. That might be more difficult. We'll see. Hope it'd be great if we could. We'd love to have him on board again. He gave him a super ride that day. I know he has, some options out there and connections with other stables and trainers and whatnot. So, I think he might like to ride him. I think he was pretty enamored with him when he rode him up in the Jockey Club. So we'll see what happens.
How's the experiment gone this year with the Appleby horses staying stateside? Because you've had so much success shipping backwards and forwards. Do you feel that this is something that you guys are going to do next year as well, or you don't know yet?
I'm not too sure, but I think it's been successful. Charlie has won, I'm not too sure, but maybe 10 or 12 graded races, and I think 4 grade ones. So I presume that's a success in anyone's estimations. So I'm not too sure. Obviously, it leaves his home team a little bit short on quality. Maybe not at the top end, but underneath that. So whether they want to rebalance it or something, I'm not too sure. I haven't had the conversation with them. But the horses have run well here. They've, especially early in the year, they've had a lot of success. So I would say it's been a successful. And I think it's, for them to have a stable based over here rather than shipping back and forward has made it a little bit easier as well.
Michael, one thing that always interests me is, you have all these fabulous horses and you wind up with all these fabulous trainers. But, if somebody were to ask, well, who is your main trainer in the United States? Say, well, it's hard to say. How do you decide which horse goes to which trainer? For instance, Brad Cox, Brendan Walsh, Bill Mott, etc.
Okay. Well, I suppose a lot of it, what we like to do is keep families together. So if Brad has trained siblings out of a certain mare, or Brendan or Bill or whoever, we usually, especially successful ones, we'll keep them with those trainers. And as they're coming through pre-training in Florida, if they have certain quirks and they don't have a relationship with one of the trainers really. We'll try and line them up where we think best suits them and who might get on best with them. And also somewhere along the line, in if they've got a good run with a certain stallion as well, we might bring that into the equation as well. So a lot of it is family oriented, and I think it's vital that they know previous siblings as well, how they respond to different types of training as well. And I think that gives us an advantage when they know the families as well. So we try to keep that there. But we will make some changes if we feel like we haven't had much luck with a certain family with a certain trainer. We might switch them up then at that stage. So, but they all want the best horses. But we do try to keep it as fair as we can as well when they're coming through. But for example, if we have a sibling to Cody's Wish, Bill probably will automatically get that. If we have a sibling to Pretty Mischievous, Brendan will automatically get that. One to Essential Quality, Brad will get that, So we try and keep them with the trainers that know the families.
So, Michael, the three of us are sort of grizzled veterans when it comes to horse racing in the United States. And we go back to the days where Sheikh Mohammed's breeding program. There you go. Yeah. We go back to the days when Sheikh Mohammed's breeding program was almost entirely centered in Europe. And when he had good horses in the United States, they were typically ones that he bought privately. Those were back in the days when you wanted to prep horses for the Kentucky Derby. They had simulated races in Dubai, to get them ready to come over here. Now, one of the big developments in the United States, breeding-wise, in the last decade, has been the Godolphin focus on breeding their own dirt horses in this country. The last 3 years, Godolphin has swept the Eclipse Award as champion breeder. Tell us a little bit about that transition, about the decision by Sheikh Mohammed, to spend mega bucks on mares, dirt mares, and create his own dirt breeding program to complement what he had in Europe.
Well, I think it's playing that long game as well, and obviously Sheikh Mohammed has bought a lot of nice mares and developed a lot of nice mares in the homebred program as well. And over time, we really had a focus more on the dirt horses over the last 10 years. That sort of happened naturally as well. Years ago, where a lot of the European mares used to come over here as well and be based here to go to, say, back in the day, the King Mambos or Danzigs or whoever it might be. And as they transitioned out, we went through a lull in America with not many really good outside of maybe Kitten's Joy or English Channel or something like that. And they weren't in America. So the sort of broodmare band transitioned more into a dirt one. We raced a lot more horses in America and that stayed here as well. So we ended up with primarily a very strong broodmare band that was dirt centric. And, probably COVID maybe helped us a little bit in that there wasn't a whole lot of movement during that time as well, that horses were staying in the countries that they were born in and stayed in. And we were fortunate enough that we had a lot of nice fillies over the last few years that were successful on the racetrack that then went into the broodmare band. And even going back to like Dubai Escapade, who is the grand dame of Immersive, she wasn't very successful for us as a broodmare. Gap Year was probably quality-wise our best horse that got to the racetrack, but she didn't get to win a graded stake or a stake race. But we felt that she had the talent, and so we kept that family going through her, and then we end up with Immersive. So, but that has happened over 20 years probably, getting those mares and developing the family and not losing faith in them if they don't hit straight away as well. And I think we've retired a lot of nice fillies over the last few years as well that will hopefully continue our program of what we're doing here in America as well. we've been probably had maybe more autonomy and who to breed to over the last 7 or 8 years as well, and that's helped in having the American program stronger than maybe it was in the past as well. And before, we used to breed an awful lot of mares just to our own stallions, and we've gone and searched out, been able to breed to some of the best stallions in central Kentucky as well as our own ones. And I think we've got a good balance to that now as well. And I think, with our stakes winners this year, I think Highland Falls is the only one with an outside stallion. All our other greatest stakes winners are all been by our own stallions, be it Nyquist or old boy like Bernardini as well in the mix as well, Street Sense. So we've been very fortunate that we've had some very nice stallions in the stallion barn. We're really looking forward to seeing at what level Nyquist is going to get to. He's had a phenomenal year, and then we have some nice horses coming in behind, like Cody's Wish, and we'll have Maxfield, who had a phenomenal sales season. We've had a horse like Speaker's Corner coming in there as well, Mystic Guide. So we have some nice horses coming through, and seeing what the Street Sense Sons have been doing, especially last weekend with McKinsey, it makes us feel pretty good having two really nice horses in the barn with Maxfield and Speaker's Corner in there as well. So we'll hopefully reap those rewards down the road as well.
It's an embarrassment of riches. It really is. Michael, I know you've got to go. You said you only had 15 minutes. I think we've taken up a lot of your time. I've got one final question.
Okay.
After a day like Saturday, you mentioned everyone's in Lexington. Half of your crew's Irish. Where do you go to celebrate? What did you do?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I was boring because I came home and, well, in actual fact, we did spend a little bit of time because Coolmore were sponsoring a race that day as well. So we got plenty of Brendan Walsh's crew to come up and get some of the Coolmore alcohol and celebrate with some champagne and whatnot in their room that day, and then came home and just wanted to watch the race over and over again. So that was the way I celebrated anyway.
All right.
Well, that's what you're telling us.
That's what I'm going to tell you, yeah.
Well, Michael, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on a great weekend. And it certainly looks like you're going to have a hell of a Breeders' Cup as well. So thanks for joining us here in the TDN Writers Room, and good luck in the Breeders' Cup.
Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
The TDN Writers Room, brought to you by the PHBA, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Opening weekend at Keeneland, good for Pennsylvania breds as well as Kentucky breds. Our Shot won the Grade 2 Woodford Stakes on the turf. That brings his earnings to more than $570,000. So congratulations to his owners, Mike Gatsis, Stephen Schoenfeld, John Terranova, and also to his breeder, Dr. S. Mark Rayberg. Our Shot in the Woodford. To find out more about what it might mean to you to own and breed Pennsylvania breds, visit www.pabred.com or call this number, 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in Breeders' Awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
As we mentioned earlier, Martin Garcia had a banner day at Santa Anita on Saturday, and I caught up with him for this week's episode of First Things First. Martini, welcome home.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be back in the winner's circle with Bob?
Well, it feels like always amazing, but more amazing because to ride one of this caliber horse, and just I don't know where he gave me the chance back, and I proved today that he liked me, and 2 for 2.
You win at 25% lifetime for Bob. 25% of your races have come from Bob. You started here in Southern California. Can you talk about what that means to you today?
Well, it means a lot. It means a lot, but you know what? I just pretty lucky to be in my boots, because there is a lot of really good jockeys too, and to pick any other one, I have the big opportunity, and it means a lot. And I mean, I do what he likes. Well, I mean, like everybody, but the main thing is that he trusts me. That's one of the biggest things in here.
And when he legs you up, you trust him, right?
Yeah, he just say, just go do your job, and that's what I do.
Martin, good to have you back. On to the Breeders' Cup. Many thanks to Martin Garcia, and he's right, guys, that when him and Bob get together, they truly do mean business. All right, we have a 4-day race weekend coming up at Santa Anita, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and special holiday racing on Monday, which means only one thing. My favorite day is Dollar Day. Dollar beer, dollar hot dogs. If you come out, Randy, I'll buy you a hot dog, I promise. I'll buy you 2, and I'll buy Bill one as well.
I'll be more interested in the beer.
Me too.
Well, guys, we talked about the 2-year-old males. Let's talk about the 2-year-old females that ran over the weekend in the Frizette, the Alcibiades, and the Oakleaf. Start off with Frizette. They had a horse in there that everybody was excited about called Senza Parole. Horse had to be scratched. Chad Brown said a minor problem. She'll be fine and back next year. But what was left over was really a weak field. And this horse, Scottish Lassie, though, however, put everything together, won by 9 over Snow White. They were both coming out of the same race, a maiden race, which neither one of them won. Scottish Lassie was 3rd in there, and Snow White was 2nd. Congratulations to the connections, and I'd go out to Santa Anita, Del Mar if I had these horses as well. But the Frizette, I think, is not going to prove to be a very strong race.
You want to bet?
Yeah, you want to bet? Yeah.
Oh, to me, Scottish Lassie's hands down the winner on paper of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies.
Wow.
Look, I mean, her final quarter mile in that race, 24.97 seconds, okay? Faster than Chancer McPatrick finished. I mean, it was a weak race, definitely a weak race on paper. The 1-2 finishers were maidens coming in. Snow White held on to finish 2nd. But the way Scottish Lassie ran in that race, oh my gosh. I mean, she's up close to a decent pace, just sitting there waiting under Jose Lascano. And then just leaves the field for dead. She wins by 9 lengths. I was not overly impressed by the West Coast 2-year-old fillies. Again, it's the same thing that you said about the 2-year-old colts, Citizen Bull, Baffert horses. When we talk about the fillies, I kind of feel the same way, if not more so. And I thought Immersive, we'll talk about her. I thought she looked good in the Alcibiades, but not nearly as good as Scottish Lassie looked. We kind of joked, Jerry Bailey and I, when we were watching this race, and I looked at the speed figures, the prospective speed figures for the races. Scottish Lassie runs 2 points slower, that's all, than Chancer McPatrick. So I said, this horse is going to get like a 90 buyer. And we're like, how could this horse get a 90 speed? Well, it was only her 2nd lifetime start. Obviously, in her first start, she either wasn't quite as fit as Jorge Abreu, the trainer, thought she would be. Maybe she just needed one race for the light bulb to go on. I don't know. But for whatever reason, what we saw from Scottish Lassie in the Frizette was very impressive. And to me, she's hands down the leading contender for the juvenile fillies.
All right. So we need to come up with some sort of bet for juvenile fillies.
Okay.
So we settle our differences. Randy, everything you said is true, but I can't get excited about a horse that beat a dreadful field. That's all. She's going to run against much better horses in the juvenile fillies. I see Zoe's shaking her head. Are you, am I going to have to make the,
if she beat a dreadful field by a length and a half,
okay,
and didn't run all that, okay, I got you. I have total agreement with you. But the dreadful field was 9 lengths behind her. And the time was almost as fast as Chancellor McPatrick ran. And the closing quarter was faster than Chancellor McPatrick ran. And if Chancellor McPatrick is one of the leading contenders and maybe the favorite for the colt race for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, what does that make Scottish Lassie against a pretty ordinary looking bunch of 2-year-old fillies? That's my opinion anyway.
All right. Fair enough.
McKinsey just continues to roll, by the way. He's the sire of her, the sire of Chancellor McPatrick. She was so good. Now, we all thought she would do that in her maiden race because I bet a fair bit amount of money on her in her maiden race. Scottish Lassie. I watched her train all summer at Saratoga. She's a good filly. Jorge Abreu, Georgie, TT, whatever you want to call him, his first grade 1 race, his first graded stakes race, former assistant to Chad Brown a long time ago. He's a horseman that I would be very confident giving a horse to. He owns this filly in part with Steve Weston, who owns a lot of horses with a lot of people. There are a bunch of them. They purchased this one post-sale off Gene Riccio out of an OBS 2-year-old sale. I went back and looked at my notes. I'm like, why didn't I love this filly? She's just this big, long, leggy, kind of backward filly. For her to do what she's done this early in her career is amazing. She was fantastic. And the filly behind her, Snow White, is a good filly as well. In fact, I bet them in an exacta in their maiden race, and they were second and third. I was counting my money before the race even went off, and it didn't happen. So 2 very good fillies going forward there. Very good fillies. Sorry, Bill. You're outnumbered.
All right. We'll see. We'll see what happens come Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Day. Then we can settle this argument that we've been having.
Well, I already owe Zoe a bottle of wine, so I might have to buy you a bottle of wine as well.
Okay. All right. So the other races were the Oak Leaf at Santa Anita and the Alcibiades at Keeneland. We've already talked about the Alcibiades with Michael Banahan, and a big win for Immersive, will likely be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly. The Alcibiades is a race that, brought together a good field. She won the Spinaway beforehand. She's obviously very, very solid. And the Oak Leaf, it's like a broken record. Baffert. Okay. It's not even these races don't turn into who's going to win. It turns into which of the Baffert horses are going to win. And the betting public got it right. They made non-compliant the favorite. And also Juan Hernandez got it right as well. He took off Nooney to ride non-compliant. But anyways, Baffert 1, 2, 3, non-compliant Nooney, and Tenmo was third. Randy, okay horses, but nobody that really took my breath away.
No, I didn't think so either. Visually watching both the races, in my opinion, the Alcibiades and the Oak Leaf. And by the way, 3 cheers to Santa Anita to go back to the name Oak Leaf. They should go back to the Norfolk for 2-year-old colts as well, instead of the Forerunner and the American Pharoah. Nothing against American Pharoah, but both races, non-compliant. She looked okay. I mean, she looked decent, but Immersive, she looked okay. She looked decent, but she didn't watch either of those races and kind of go, whoa. So, I mean, they'll be up there among the favorites, but I just prefer I prefer the New York horse.
14 winners of the Oak Leaf Stakes, formerly the Chandelier Stakes, have gone on to win the Eclipse Award. I'm not sure non-compliant is going to be one of those, but congratulations to Bloodstock agent Nick Hines for purchasing this filly for $150,000. She looks like a bargain. Nooney was $1.8 million. Bob still can't believe she couldn't go 2 turns. He was a little bit gutted off that performance. I still think she can, but I don't know. She'll probably back up in distance. And 'tis the law, picking up another graded stake on the day. He had a great weekend with Cynthian taking down the grade 2 Miss Grillo as well. So we got some freshman stallions really starting to make a mark. But yes, they did crawl home. They did crawl home. So won't be on my ticket most likely, but you never know.
And one thing before we'll talk about this when we get to the Breeders' Cup as well. Back in the day, and really not all that long ago, when the Breeders' Cup was in Southern California, horses based in Southern California had a huge advantage.
Sure.
And it made sense, and it bore out statistically as well. Not so much nowadays because of, and I think we've discussed this on the podcast before, because of the horse safety initiatives, especially out on the West Coast. The racing surfaces in California are much safer, much deeper than they used to be. They're much more like East Coast racetracks than the old hard and fast, sun-baked Southern California racetracks that we all sort of grew up with. So the difference shipping east to west is not as pronounced as it used to be. And now we're seeing New York horses, Kentucky horses ship into California for the Breeders' Cup and more than hold their own. And so that applies to the 2-year-old races especially.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by XBTV. This week's work of the week is the Chosen Brawn. Is this one of Randy's favorite horses? I can't remember.
It's one of everybody's favorite horses.
All right, watch this work then, Randy. This Calbred will come into the Breeders' Cup Sprint riding a 7-race winning streak, including a head victory in the Grade 1 Bing Crosby last out in July. He'll train up to the Breeders' Cup and seen here working a half mile in 48-1. Now check out the horse behind him. That's Bob Baffert's Silent Law, an impressive first out winner at Los Al, who worked 4 furlongs in 48 flat.
Be a smarter, better with XBTV. The best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart with XBTV.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by Kentucky Breds. This weekend, as is the case with many weekends, a testament to the global power of breeding in Kentucky. Start with Friday, opening day at Keeneland. The Alcibiades won by Immersive, her second Grade 1. Saturday, 4 of the 5 Grade 1 stakes in America went to Kentucky Breds. Citizen Bull, American Pharaoh, Chancellor McPatrick Champagne, East Avenue, Claiborne Breeders Futurity. We talked about those. Gina Romanica won her second consecutive First Lady Stakes. And then on Sunday, Idiomatic in the Spinster, Ramatui won the Group 1 Prix de la Forêt on the Arc Day card. That's a lot of Kentucky breds. As usual, Kentucky breds, breed them, buy them, raise them. We all win.
Well, let's wrap up last weekend's racing. And Zoe Cadman, you are our European expert. So I'm just going to throw it to you. The Arc won by Blue Stocking, Juddmonte horse. Zoe, tell us the rest of the story.
I bet on her. Did you bet on her, Randy? I thought she was a shoo-in.
Do I have to admit, I forgot the race was even being run. I was sitting in my hotel room prepping for the rest of the rest of the races that day at Keeneland, and then I realized too late. Not that I would have bet on the horse anyway. I'm like Bill. I didn't know enough about any of those horses. You're our expert.
Ross Orion, Rafe Beckett, Blue Stocking, a record 7th win for Juddmonte. Just really cool to see the Juddmonte Silks winning for the 7th time after Enable and everything. Blue Stocking was just absolutely terrific. And as always, you know, it's a little bit softer turf over there, especially this time of the year. I believe there was one horse, I can't remember the name of him, but they wanted to withdraw him. And apparently it was going to cost 55,000 euros to withdraw him. Could you imagine if this happened stateside, that you had to pay to withdraw your horse? So they wound up having to run the horse rather than pay the 55,000. Yeah, I know. I see how you're looking, but it's true. That's exactly what happened. You can look it up when we're done with this, but Blue Stocking was terrific. I don't know if Blue Stocking is going to come over here or not. There are a couple of others that are likely to come over here from the big card of racing at Longchamp. Camille Pistero, a 2-year-old for Aidan O'Brien, took down the Jean-Luc Lagardère. Yep. That horse is liable to come over. Good to see Kieran Schumacher for John and Thady Gosden finally get his first Group 1 win for them, because people have been knocking him all year long. He won on Friendly Soul. That horse will probably come over for the filly and mare turf for trainer John Gosden. Ramtuel for Tony Parker, the former NBA player. that filly will likely come over here. So it was a terrific day of racing at Longchamp, highlighted by Blue Stocking and Godolphin.
Well, I can tell you this. Nick Luck, after the ARC, texted with, trying to look up his name right now on my phone, but I can't find it. It's the guy that helps coordinate for Juddmonte, their European racing team. And he said no to the Breeders' Cup turf. He said that is not in their plans. But still, the ARC, one of the great races in the world anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move back to this side of the Atlantic Ocean. And Idiomatic's had kind of a strange year. She wasn't nearly as dominant as she was last year. She was always running well, but, a horse with her abilities, I was a little bit surprised she just didn't run ramshot over the rest of this division. Maybe she's back because she looked awful good in the Spinster. Again, going right to the lead. But Randy, I didn't think there was a bias on Sunday at all.
No.
At Keeneland. So let's not, chalk that up to her. It's good to see because, the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf lost to Dare Manor. And you don't want it to be
the distaff.
That's right. I'm sorry. The distaff lost to Dare Manor. You don't want it to just be a walkover for Kenny McPeak's horse. So it's good that the Spinster Idiomatic came out of the Spinster with a big win, and see what she can do in the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, I probably had a little bit of a different opinion about this, I think, than most people going in. I mean, a lot of people thought Idiomatic had lost a step, maybe a quarter of a step, but in her two defeats this year, both photo finish losses, she had very legitimate excuses for both. One of them, she didn't break very well, and she was 4 wide around both turns, and still lost in a photo to Randomize with a 99 Beyer speed figure. That was actually one of the best races she's ever run. And then the last time out in the Personal Ensign, she gets involved in this suicidal pace duel with the same horse with Randomized. They went a half in 46.66, going 1 1/8 at Saratoga. That was the fastest half mile in a 9 furlong dirt race at Saratoga in 5 years. And she still spit out Randomized and opened up 4 lengths and just barely got run down by Raging Sea. I thought that was a fantastic race for Idiomatic as well, given the pace situation. So I thought she was an absolute cinch on Sunday, and it doesn't surprise me at all that she runs off and wins by 6 lengths. Now, does that make her better than Torpedo Anna? I don't know. I would probably give Torpedo Anna the edge right now. But it's going to be a fantastic distaff because you've got a horse named Awesome Result coming from Japan. That's a daughter of Justify. That's 7 for 7 lifetime. It's going to be an interesting race.
Going to be a very interesting race. And it was a good ride by Flo just to go. And he conceded prior to the race that, he went too fast the last time. But that's what she needs to do. She needs to go. She's got no turn of foot. You watch her come down the lane. She looks like she's a 3-mile chaser in soft ground. Those old knees come up. She almost bashes herself in the face, and she just gallops along. She can knock off 12s all day long. So just let her roll and see what happens. But I don't feel that she's lost much either. She's just got one way to go. She's one-paced for sure, but she can carry that speed a long way.
And right now, you're looking at Torpedo Anna, Idiomatic, Awesome Result, who's by Justify out of a deputy minister mare, by the way. She's been raced in Japan, but she is a Kentucky bred, and she won her most recent prep by 5 lengths, going 1.25 miles. You got Raging Sea, who won the Beldame, but who was life and death to win the Beldame, but she beat Idiomatic before that. Gunsong, beaten in a photo in the Cotillion. Musical Mischief, that won the Locust Grove. Maybe Candied, Sugarfish, It's a solid race, but the top 3, the Japanese filly, along with especially Torpedo Anna and Idiomatic, it's going to be a very, very competitive distaff, I think.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Jockey Club Derby Invitational. And I wanted to bring this race up because, Randy has his favorite horses. Zoe has his favorite horses. I have my favorite horses. I think Carson's Run belongs on our list, all of our list of our favorite horses, for the story that, we've talked a lot so much about over the years, and over the last couple of years with the young man having the same affliction that Cody Dorman had. I talked to Terry Finley afterwards. They're delighted that the horse won, but they are not going to the Breeders' Cup.
Okay.
they are going to run in the Hawthorne Derby, etc. Instead, he said he doesn't think the horse at this point in his career is fast enough to win the Breeders' Cup Turf. So hopefully at 4, he'll be 4 or 5 lengths faster. Then they'll go to it. So he's headed off to Hawthorne, which should be a pretty easy payday for him. And then we'll see what he does in 2025.
It's one of the things that makes West Point so successful is that Terry Finley is a very pragmatic, very intelligent owner when it comes to spotting his horses. I was just going to say, has anyone talked to Terry Finley or talked to Christophe Clement about the Breeders' Cup? Because if it was my horse, no way would I run. He is not fast enough right now. If he's good enough, okay, but he's not fast enough right now. And he's a 3-year-old, so he'd be facing a really tough bunch of older horses. So I think they're doing the right thing. But what a great story and what an easy horse to pull for.
Yeah, and he's very cool. Dylan, again, so glad to have him on last week. And he's just a consummate professional. Good kid, good rider, doing everything right and making all the right moves. And looks like we'll see Christophe Clement coming to Del Mar, but towards the end of November. He'll bring some turfers out for the Del Mar Derby, Hollywood Derby, right? Hollywood, what's it called? The grade 1 at the end of the meet, the Matriarch and...
I think it's a Hollywood Derby, right?
Yeah, Hollywood Derby, yeah. Okay.
So one last thing I want to get to before we bid adieu. The Breeders' Cup announced their race schedule and their TV format for the week. And we're only going to get 2.5 hours on the network on NBC. The rest will be on the USA Network, and then you can find it a couple other places. But this year, they're going to make, because they want the Breeders' Cup Classic to be part of the session that's on NBC. They made it the 5th race on the card. So there's going to be 4 Breeders' Cup races before the Breeders' Cup Classic and 4 afterwards. And it's a shame. It really is. I know, Zoe, you told me last year that, and they only had 2 races after the Breeders' Cup, that it looked like, all the electricity left the building, and the other ones were just an afterthought. There's no one to blame here, and I'm certainly not blaming NBC. This is the world we live in. College football is king. Remember that college football is always going to take precedent over horse racing. And they have this contract with the Big Ten to show Saturday night games. So as long as the races are run in the West Coast, get used to it. This is what we're going to do. However, if they get sooner or later, they'll get back to Belmont and then Keeneland, maybe Churchill Downs someday as well. Because of the time difference, you won't have that problem. And you can run the Breeders' Cup as the last race on the card. So it's one more reason to get that Belmont Park back up and running and make it the Breeders' Cup, get in the Breeders' Cup rotation. But yeah, it's a little I'll watch all the races, of course, but how many people, it's like they play the Super Bowl and then afterwards they're going to have girls flag football for you to watch. It's really is going to be, I think, anticlimactic.
I can give you a little bit of inside information. It's not just a football issue. There are 2 issues on the Saturday card as it pertains to NBC. Number 1 issue is that that Saturday of the Breeders' Cup, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, is 3 days before the presidential election. And NBC very much believes that they do not need for horse racing to preempt the Saturday evening news, which will be very, very, as you might guess, election centric. So they want to get off, I believe it's 6 o'clock Eastern, in time to hit the NBC news right there. They could back it up to make that happen, but the Breeders' Cup does not want to begin running Breeders' Cup races as early as 11 a.m. Pacific time. They want a few races leading up to the Breeders' Cup races on Saturday, at least 2 of them I think they're going to have. They don't want to go any earlier than that. So that sort of compresses the window at which Breeders' Cup races can be run on NBC. Now, is it that important? Zoe can speak to this. In England, in the United States, we're accustomed to running our major stakes races as either the next to last race on the card, sometimes the second to last race, like the Kentucky Derby. Nowadays, we're seeing more and more making them the last race of the day, sort of like a boxing card, right, where the main event runs last. But in Europe, it's never that way. In Europe, it's very common for the most important race of the day to be run in the middle of the card. And I don't know, betting wise, I don't think it's really going to matter because people are still going to bet on the Breeders' Cup races. Most of it's done online anyway nowadays. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I wish it was, I wish the Classic was the grand finale. And it'll be much more likely to happen when it goes back to the Eastern time zone. But that's what's going on. That's why it has to be the way it is for this year.
So that's this year. But why can't we run the Breeders' Cup Saturday on a Sunday?
NFL.
Still?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're not going to knock heads with the NFL.
I don't know what the answer is. I do know I don't like running it in the middle of the card. I also don't love having it on the East Coast because you got to deal with the weather. It's November in New York. You never know what you're going to get. At least in Southern California, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get sunshine. So that's my only problem with the East Coast Breeders' Cup.
Well, it should be coming back to Belmont, I guess 2027. They say they're going to reopen the track in 2026. I'm sure the Breeders' Cup wants them to make sure that everything goes right and that they don't have to change their plans. So we shall see. But Zoe, I'm an East Coast guy, so I want to see it back in the East Coast. You're a West Coast gal. You'd like to have it in the West Coast. That's fair enough.
Well, as soon as Belmont gets remodeled, we will definitely have the Breeders'. And there's one more little ancillary thing about running the Breeders' Cup Classic this year, where it's going to be at. Obviously, there's going to be a tremendous amount of global interest in City of Troy in the Classic, especially in Europe. Well, because the Breeders' Cup Classic is run when it's going to be run in mid-afternoon, West Coast time. It makes it a little bit more palatable. It's prime time, really, in Europe for people to watch City of Troy and bet on City of Troy over there. So it's bad over here, but it's kind of a fringe benefit over there as far as the global betting market is concerned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And talking of Breeders' Cup, in this week's Breeders' Cup Connections feature, our own Katie Petruniak profiles Taylor Canberra, Richard Mandela's assistant trainer who works with Sub Sanador, whose win in the inaugural California Crown has earned him a starting berth in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Sub Sanador in between horses. Here's the line. Sub Sanador.
That's all heart right there. My hands are sore from high-fiving each other after the race. The Breeders' Cup it's our Olympics. It's the end goal. As long as he just keeps improving the way he's doing right now, I think we'll have a pretty good shot at either, whether he runs in the mile or the Classic. We used to watch the great horses on TV when I was a kid, and never did I ever think that I would get to be around them, let alone, ride a horse like Omaha Beach or get to work with a horse like Sub Sanador every day. It is a dream come true.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. That win by Carson's Run in the Jockey Club Derby was West Point's 20th stakes win of 2024. And Christophe Clement, the trainer of Carson's Run, will now send out Don't Look Back at All for West Point in Sunday's Grade 2 Franklin Stakes at Keeneland. Also, Ohana Honor will run Friday in the Grade 3 Sycamore Stakes.
Well, guys, that's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss and Zoe Cadman, our guests of the week, Michael Banahan, and, of course, our editors and producers who worked so hard behind the scenes, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Alita LaRocca. Thanks for tuning us in. We'll see you next week.